If you didn't make it, try to make it next year. We all had a blast. So without further ado, we're here today to talk about effective monitoring for operational security. I'm going to give a quick overview, and then we're going to get into those slides I was just telling you about with all the output data. So by monitoring, we're talking about processes and tools that we use for tracking information and statistics, alerting based on them, and detecting trends and anomalies. And for this presentation, we're focusing on log data and also output from some active monitoring tools that we use, things like ping and SNMP and WMI, as well as some custom scripts. We work for a small IT company, and so our department is actually responsible for both IT infrastructure and security. And for that reason, monitoring is essential for IT operations to ensure availability and performance and keep track of utilization, as well as for information security. So we monitor access to resources, of course, and we're looking for malicious activity to start our incident response process. Briefly, why is monitoring important? Well, monitoring is important for situational awareness and for knowing your baseline statistics, i.e. what is normal. The more you monitor and review your IT operations, the better your situational awareness and knowledge of what's normal is going to be. So how can you detect anomalies or abnormal traffic or behavior without baselines and knowing what normal looks like? Do you know what your normal bandwidth utilization looks like? Do you know where your users normally VPN in from? If you're not monitoring those things, you're not going to have a good, solid idea of what is normal. Second, monitoring is important because it improves your IT operations. Yes, availability and performance monitoring are generally not responsibilities of InfoSec teams. But what do your security teams do when they come across application errors or a misconfiguration that will impact performance or availability? You know, those things, in addition to, you want to notify your system admins and your users, or you want to fix those problems before your users see them, utilization spikes and application errors can also be indicators of compromise. Third, monitoring is important, actually critical to incident detection and response. This is a slide from learnsecurity.org quoting a FireEye report that it takes 146 days to detect a breach. There have been lots of reports that say anywhere from 99 to 500 days. Any way you look at it, it's too long. For the average company, it takes way too long to detect a breach. Monitoring is critical for incident detection. You don't want to have to wait for your users to notify you or Brian Krebs or someone else's blog to notify you that you've had a breach, right? So daily manual log review of exceptions and anomalies is a key to security operations and incident detection. All right, so we know monitoring is important. What do you monitor? These are some of the logs and data that we focus on. Things like your server logs, event logs, syslog, right? Your security and network device logs, firewalls, routers, other infrastructure. Maybe even web proxy logs or DNS request logs and logs from your applications. How do you decide what to log and what logs to analyze and review? We actually borrowed this slide with permission from yesterday's keynote speaker, Jessica Payne. This is from one of her blog posts. It's called Monitoring What Matters. And this is what Microsoft's incident response team often finds when they're called in to do incident response. Many organizations either seem to log way too much, right, without the proper context, or not enough. Usually other than the default logging capability. So you need to decide what to log based on your business needs and the resources that you have to analyze them. You also need to set up tools and processes to make sure you're not drinking from a fire hose. And you're not helping yourself by not keeping any logs. So when determining your monitoring strategy, you need to determine what's critical to the business, right? This might be determined for you if you have compliance requirements like PCI, HIPAA, FISMA, FedRAMP, etc. It's also going to vary depending on the type of business you are. If you're a retail company, you're going to have different needs than a government contractor or an information security company. And of course, you should try to monitor appropriate to the risk level that's acceptable to your organization. All right, now we're going to tell you about our events management process. And I have a laser pointer. I hope this helps and isn't a distraction. Over here on the left, so these are all the logs we were talking about, right? Your server logs, routers, network infrastructure, storage devices. We feed everything into Splunk. You can use any log analysis tool. We use Splunk, and so that's what we're going to be talking about here. On Splunk, we have a lot of queries that we've developed over the years, custom queries to analyze all that data. And they generate some real-time, like 1 to 5 minute searches, generate alerts for high severity issues, that will go to our support team. They'll resolve the issues and, create a ticket. In addition to those, we have about 50 today daily tickets that produce us reports for things like successes and fails of backups or system accesses and authentication, also customer support tickets. All of these tickets get reviewed on a daily basis. And when it comes time for our audits, we actually are able to print out all of the tickets that our auditors want to see from the various weeks that they pick and tell us, and just give them a stack of, PDFs and reports. And it really, really streamlines the audit process for us to be able to do that. And they basically just say, here's what we need. We're going to look it all over and ask you any questions that we have. And, we tell them about anything new, of course, but that's the majority of what we have to provide to our auditors are these daily tickets that we review. In addition, when we see an opportunity for improvement, if there's a ticket that has way too much data or not enough pieces of critical information, we'll go back and modify the search and output criteria to continually improve the process. So, monitoring authentication. What exactly do we monitor? Success and fails of authentication to various systems like Active Directory, VPN logins, things like that. Application authentications from the custom apps that our organization operates. Multi-factor authentication tools. So we're going to show a bunch of tickets like this. This is what I was talking about. If you want to move forward to see it better, feel free. This is an example of our daily RDP logins. So this is Windows Remote Desktop servers, right? Authentications to RDP. And this is the output we see in the daily ticket. On the left, we've redacted information by basically copying white space. So you'd have the username there, account name, of course, whether it was a success or a fail, the source IP address, and the timestamp. So with this ticket, we might be looking for things like multiple failed logins or people logging in at a very unusual time to review the activity and look for things that are abnormal that we might need to, further investigate. This is a particular system daily authentication ticket, and here it's showing us some SSH logins. These are actually automated processes that are logging in, but it's a good example to see for authentications. Obviously, we've got the process, it's SSHD. You would see the user account, the source IP address as well, like the previous ticket, and of course your timestamp on the left. For monitoring remote access, we're talking about VPN logins. We monitor success and fail. We show them in our tickets. We're able to review all the successes every day in addition to fails because, again, we're a fairly small company. Larger companies, this might not scale as well, but for us, we look at all the successful logins as well on a daily basis. And one of the things that we found is actually really useful is we sort of get a location piece of information in our daily tickets by doing a reverse lookup on the IP address that the user logged in from and putting that in the ticket. So we see the FQDN, or fully qualified domain name, in the ticket. And this is what that looks like. So this is a daily VPN users ticket. And on the left, you've got your origin, your VPN endpoint, or your originating gateway, the user account, the timestamp, and on the right, I redacted the beginning of these because you actually have the reverse IP. But you can see our company is located in the DC area. Most of our users are in Baltimore, DC, and Northern Virginia. You can see in the top one here, baltimoremaryland.fios.verizon.net, right? And down here you see washingtondc.fios.verizon.net. So if we see a login from someone from Texas that we know lives in Virginia, we'll go to their supervisor and say, hey, are they on vacation? Should they be logging in from Texas? So it's a great way we can look for unusual activity by reviewing these every day and, having a fairly small user base and knowing where everyone resides. Folks have actually gotten used to this over time, and they'll generally come to us or send us an email like, hey, I'm going to be traveling next week, so, don't go asking my boss where I am when you see my login, Monitoring email. We're looking for mass spam and phishing campaigns by monitoring email information. Also, OWA logins. OWA is Outlook Web Access. It's the web interface for Microsoft Exchange, if you're not familiar. And with that, we get the devices that are logging in and locations by IP addresses again. We also monitor attachments for sort of a data loss prevention kind of a basic DLP. I'll show you the ticket where we can look for people possibly sending information out that they shouldn't be. This is a daily outbound attachments ticket. And so what we have here is timestamp, of course, on the left. You've got the file name, and this is the file that they attached from within our organization. Obviously, you're not going to see this for Gmail and stuff, but for the organization's email, that's the file name of the attachment, who it was from, and who it was to. So by reviewing this information, we become accustomed to what's normal, and we look for things that are possibly abnormal. Someone sending out HR information, or procedure manuals, or someone sending an authorization for a file transfer, that kind of thing we've caught before and gone to folks and said, hey, should you be doing this? Was it encrypted? Those sorts of questions. This is a daily Outlook Web Access connections ticket, and with this one you see the IP address that their device connected from. This is your phone or laptop logging into the system, the user account, and the device ID. And so with this ticket, you're looking for something like a crazy number of different IP addresses, which might just indicate that they're driving and hitting a lot of cell towers. Also multiple device IDs. Mostly with this ticket, I think we get to know what's normal and we just catch things that are really abnormal. It's kind of a lot of information, but at times it has been useful to us. For web traffic, we send all of our proxy logs and policy violation logs into Splunk, and we have daily tickets where we go back and review top 10s. These are things like the top 10 users of bandwidth, of web proxy users, the top 10 sites that they're going to, the top 10 categories, and of course policy violators. And we also send our DNS logs into Splunk, and we have a ticket. We actually have real times and a daily ticket that are looking for some things we'll get into a little bit later. So this is a proxy violations alert. This is one of the real times. So this isn't a daily. This might be an hourly. I'm not sure, but it's either hourly or a real time. Ryan says every 15 minutes. So here you get the user account, your timestamp, of course. You see the category. This is a sexually explicit website was attempted to go to, and you actually get the URL, right? So from here, we can go back and check out the policy violation from the device or the user, and also use this to tweak the categories because they're obviously not always perfect, right? Anyone who's doing web proxy admin. This one is a potential C2 over DNS, and I need Ryan to explain this.
So basically what we're looking for is the randomness of the domain that's being requested. So in essence, we're looking at what's the entropy, because this can be an indicator of communication over DNS tunneling. And this is also great for trying to detect those randomly generated domains that are also used for command and control communications.
For physical access, we monitor and review every day success and fail for all the key card swipes at our headquarters building location. So when you're going into various parts of the building, you have to swipe your key. Those get logged and they go into a daily ticket. In addition to the daily ticket, we have a real-time alert for when someone swipes to go through a door that we don't have them configured, access rights to, and we'll get an alert on that immediately. And with these, by reviewing these every day again, we're learning normal patterns so that we can spot anomalies. This is an example of one of those daily physical security accesses. So on the left, you have your timestamp. Then you have the account name, the result, whether it was access granted or access denied. And on the right, we have the location, right? So you can see things like rear entrance, lower level double doors, those sorts of things. Again, this might not scale, obviously, to a really large organization, but for us, it works really well to keep track, and we can see, like, Larry was working late yesterday, for example. All right, Ryan's going to take over now.
So unannounced file changes to your servers and several endpoints could be an indicator of compromise. So what we do is we monitor these file systems with tools such as Tripwire and Splunk. We sort of accomplish the same thing with the Windows event logs for our DFS shares. We're looking for the unauthorized changes of files and the unauthorized access of these files. So we're looking for success and fail for this. There we go. So here's an example of one of our Tripwire tickets that we receive every day, and we review it in the morning. This is an example of our Linux Tripwire ticket. We're looking for changes that we didn't expect to see. So since we're a small group, we usually tell each other if we change something on a system. Then in the morning, we know what to expect. But we're looking, as you can see, there's removed elements, there's added elements, and then you can see that there are modified elements. So we're looking for the modification of certain files and the addition of certain files that could potentially be malicious, such as a PHP shell. And this is the example of our DFS ticket in the morning. So here you can see that we're monitoring the HR document share. And we know who should be accessing and modifying files in these shares. So it's one of those things that we're looking for anomalies, and also looking for users that, are either illegally trying to modify a file or just try to access the shares in general. So trying to detect physical access leaving your building is pretty difficult. So we're trying to monitor this, such as print jobs, optical media being written to disk, and USB usage. Globally, we block USB with group policy, but we found a method which I'll show you later on how to detect if someone actually attempted to plug one of these USB devices in. This is an example of us reviewing the daily print jobs of individuals in the organization. So on the left side, you can see that it shows the number of pages and the users, along with the printer that the job was sent to and the document that was printed. So here we're looking for an individual that we know shouldn't be printing a certain document or shouldn't have access to a certain document, but somehow gained that access and is now trying to take the document outside of the building. And here's an alert from Sysmon that we have configured to notify us if an individual attempts to plug a USB device into their machine. So we get this, it's a real-time search. It's looking for certain changes on the system in the registry keys, and it notifies us, telling us which computer the device was plugged into, along with the device that was used or plugged into the machine. So, along with, a lot of these crypto miners and other resource-intensive malware payloads, as you can say, utilizing, performance monitors on systems is becoming even more important. So we use it not only for billing and planning, but for identifying malicious activity on a system. Because we view this data on a daily basis, we know what's normal, so we're just looking for something that's abnormal to us. And this is an example of one of those alerts telling us that the threshold of the disk space was exceeded. Same thing goes for, CPU utilization, just, like with a crypto miner. If all of a sudden our system spikes right away and we don't expect it to, well, there's potentially something going on there. So we have all of these security devices in our organizations, and taking advantage of the data that they have has become pretty difficult just because of the sheer number of devices that we have. So what we're doing is we're sourcing all of the data from these devices and sending them into our SIM, and then writing these useful alerts and reports to notify us either in real time or on a daily or hourly basis, telling us what we actually want to know. And we're not like Russell said, we're not drinking from that fire hose. We're just trying to take advantage of the data that it's providing us. And here's one of those. Here's an example of that. So we get an hourly email showing us the past hour of IPS alerts. And what we're doing is we're trying to identify abnormalities in this. We're looking for spikes in specific signatures, or we're looking for a large number of signatures that were hit from, a single source, or that there's a single destination. All depends on your organization. And here's another example. This is an alert that hits as soon as something in our Splunk search is identified. In this example, it's an Angular exploit kit was detected, and it's giving us the resource that the signature actually saw and detected on, along with the source machine and the destination. This way, we can easily initiate our incident response procedures and go from there. So for endpoints, we don't do anything really crazy. We use regular commercial a regular commercial endpoint product. Just basic protections, but then on top of that we put Sysmon for more visibility, and we use the alerting capability of our endpoint product to notify us in real time of an alert, or if an agent's out of date. And for the alerts themselves on a virus being detected, we receive a text message. This way it can speed up the process of contacting the individual that the alert was set off on. This is an example of that. So not only do we receive a text message, but we also receive an email with all the resource information that we need, and then can go from there. So I talked about Sysmon earlier on. We used Swift on Security's configuration, which is awesome, and then modified it for our environment. And when I say modify, we basically removed things or added exceptions for things that were just noise and prevented us from actually identifying the actual malicious activity. So to deploy the Sysmon implementation, we use group policy to send out Sysmon along with the configuration file, then sent a Splunk forwarder to the endpoint, which is how we actually get it to our SIM. The configuration is updated on a regular basis with a regular scheduled task. That way, if we see that we need to add something during the day, we just shoot it in and the endpoint receives it. And then we wrote alerts and reports that we deem useful for our environment, just to take advantage of the data. And finally, our big goal is to integrate the MITRE ATT&CK matrix with our Sysmon implementation in Splunk, hopefully by the end of the year. So here are a few examples of our Sysmon alerts that we have. I'm going to go through a few of these real quick. So the first is the illegal image activity alert. We know what to expect from our users to run. We know what they shouldn't be running. So we have a list of images that we're looking for and then sending us an alert on. In this example, it's MSHTA executing an HTA file on an endpoint. So here's an alert for an illegal or suspicious child process of an Office document. This could be PowerPoint or Word, but basically we took a baseline of what Sysmon sees when you open up one of these Office products, and then excluded that from the search. And so we're pretty much looking for any other child process of Office. This way we're not specifically looking for PowerShell or MSHTA or CertUtil. We're looking for something that we're not used to seeing. And this is for Reg SVR32. This is straight from the MITRE ATT&CK matrix. So it's pretty much the same thing as the others. We're looking for activity that we don't expect. And in this example, you can see that we ran the atomic red team example for scrub.j.dll, and it identified it. And the final example is the connection outbreak search that we have. So we know the average number of machines that a certain endpoint would connect to on a daily basis. So what we're looking for is an abnormal number of network connections. So this could be an outbreak of a virus, it could be someone using WMI, it could be anything. We're just looking for some sort of abnormal behavior of remote connections from one single endpoint.
All right, to wrap up, in conclusion, you need an effective monitoring strategy to understand what normal IT operations look like, maximize your detection capabilities, and obviously to be able to perform thorough incident response. Also, your auditors will like you if you execute an effective monitoring strategy because it makes their job easier. So that's it. Thank you, and we hope our presentation will encourage you to enhance your monitoring strategy. I think we're out of time, but we're going to be hanging out all day if you want to come talk to us about any of this. Thank you.